Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Tara Reade came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer. And knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers. And knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character. That his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reade gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. March of Dimes. Family fun run cancer bonanza. Front page of Apartheid Times. All of the charm of a car bomb. Arms wide open, taking no targets alive. Dark was the night, save for a red glow painting the sky in a sickening light. Like a scene out of hell or a day in an utterly alien life. When the fire runs wild. These are the years where the wild is more your daily drive. To wrestle the truth of extinction from out of the jaws of your pride. So open them wide, now is the time, there's nothing to fight. Blasted or sworn to defy, the end is the same and we're inches away from the line. So abandon your ego to die, the bed that we made is where we go to die. But never was passing in one's own sleep such a hideous sight. Such a storm of convulsion and vile expulsion from out of our mouths and our eyes. But these are the rights they implore us to exercise, with our signature forged and our hands all tied. And with eye contact and a senator's smile, they thank you for saving democracy right as they tighten the binds. Right when they're joining your chain to your neighbors, leading you out in a line. Call it the March of Dimes. One more charity parody. Hold back grants while we dance for the president's salary. Funding the bunkers where all of the wealthy will cower to witness our steepest decline. To err is a trait so inherently human. And to hoard enough wealth that you peacefully sleep when those humans are burning alive is truly divine. If divinity really means withered and fully decaying inside, you could live with yourself till you run out of wine and ring for a drone off a prime, skim a little off at the top of the March of Dimes. Sign of our system of capital, head to the sky with a hideous cry that mimics the suffering families out on the street that have built a career out of passing by, who were part of the great design, part of a citizen base with its fate resigned, part of a two-party system where both of the goals align, and the end result is more housing crisis than the plot device of 2009. Capitalism demanded a sacrifice, so I walk to the square, hand them my son, and they hand me the dice. I roll for his life. To an equal extent, you could say I was rolling for mine. I'd called any favor, I paid any bribe. But it's all up to me for the roll, so I close my eyes. And the sound of the crowd is the same for a 1 or a 5. Two equal outcomes playing as though they're on opposite sides. And I know in my heart that on 4 out of 6 he'll be fine. But I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. Nah, I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight.
know, sir, I like you much better with my glasses off.
I guess I was born with the curse of foresight, 'cause I knew Joe was only gonna represent the war side. And that said, I just came to fight. You could keep the ore flight. Save the surprise and the gasp when the shadow of the fascists have cast is on your doorstep in the glow of your porch light. Save the surprise when the grid goes down and we go underground to lick wounds in the gloom of a torchlight. While up in the sky, a blimp glides by with a sign like New Year's 2022. Brought to you jointly by Pfizer and Coors Light. While the centrists observe from a comfortable courtside, right in the thick of the action behind a partition. We're in a morbid position, a plague of evictions, born a comorbid condition of the cancer of wealth. I fantasize that I cancel myself, hands on your head, throw your best laid plans in the well. There are no more answers, questions go back on the shelf. All Joe's donors, a quick show of hands. How many of you sub to the Lockheed Martin OnlyFans? How many are loyalist patrons for the Raytheon Patreon? Occupy Iraq and send 1 million off into the great beyond. Cool yourself with the safety on. True to yourself in as much as you dutifully spew out a mucus of QAnon. You can't convince me the Capitol wasn't surrendered with every intention of digging us deeper down into the treacherous webbing of censorship, ebbing your speech and dissension so you can't hold Biden accountable. Not in his mentions and not in the streets. Know to the end that Joe will defend the elite. Joe won't embarrass McConnell, but Joe's not embarrassed if all of your children are hungry and weak. Too hungry to speak. Too hungry to stay and they just lie at his feet. Joe is fresh out of empathy, fresh out of policy, but he'd love to know, what was your favorite ice cream flavor to eat? Back when you used to eat. I guess the road isn't rocky for people who thought we were free. They'll believe what they read and Joe's here to lull them to sleep. Counting us down by the dozens, the culling of gullible sheep, led to the slaughter by media tyrants and government thieves. These are the leeches that stubbornly suck where there's nothing to bleed. These are the tumors that force us to crawl on our knees. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Politics of Survival. It's nice to be with you all tonight. And I have a special guest coming at 7:15. He's actually doing his own podcast right now, and he'll tell us all about that. And that'll be Daniel Burke, and he is amazing. So I wanted to open the show while we wait for him, because he'll be, like I said, coming in at about 7:15. I wanted to talk about a couple of headlines that came up. And Reef is here, extraordinaire engineer, producer, executive producer, Reef. Thank you from Indie News Network. And I want to say thank you to Indie. And supporting independent content is so important right now, especially when so many voices are censored and banned. Don't you agree, Reef?
Yes, I do agree.
Yes, it's so important. So I wanted to tell everyone, like, as you're entering, like, please feel free to post a question or post a comment, and we can have like a little interactive talk while we wait for Daniel. And I wanted to, one of the things that really caught my attention today, actually, it was a couple days old, but Tennessee has criminalized camping. And it's a law that's aimed at the homeless, basically. So it's a felony to camp. So people living in their car are in danger of being arrested for a felony. And so when you look at the statistics worldwide, right? I mean, worldwide, countrywide, American-wide, rents have increased 25 to 30% on average, in some places more than others. In the Bay Area of San Francisco, you're hearing about, rent being $8,000 a month, and then people paying $800 for sleeping pods, like as if they're on a train.
Well, and with gas,
so anyway, and gas is $9 a gallon in some places.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So do you have, Reef, do you have that headline we can just pop up for everybody to look at? The Tennessee one?
Yes, I do. You want the one from your Twitter, right? This one.
Yeah. I shared a tweet about it because I was really sad about it. So it becomes the first state to make public camping a felony. So this isn't about camping, okay? This is about really criminalizing poverty. And this is really stark, and it needs to not be a reality. It's very scary. So I don't know if any of you are in the chat, if you want to make a comment about that. Reef, I don't know if you see anyone chatting or coming in, but yeah, I'm just really
Kansas
shocked,
City,
but at the same time,
Kansas City banned roommates apparently as well. That's what Crab is here to tell us. So,
hi Crab, thank you for making that. Kansas City banned roommates.
Yep.
Like, what are college students supposed to do? Like, I spent half my 20s with roommates, for good or for worse, but like, that's so ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't even know how do you enforce that?
I mean, right? I guess someone would have to snitch. Like, that would have to happen. But yeah,
I feel like America is heading into this dystopian, fascist, authoritative state more and more each day. There's more and more laws just piling upon each other, trying to actually, besides the wealth gap, just criminalizing being poor.
Right.
And, pretty soon we're going to have debtor's prison, which is one of the reasons why America is because they wanted to get away from England's system. Remember debtor's prison, if you read about it in the history's books, was pretty dark, and whole families sometimes would be imprisoned. If the father, for instance, had gambling debts or debts that weren't paid or medical debts, they would literally have to be imprisoned. Right. I mean, one of the things that America was getting away from was that elitism and that classism. Supposedly, of course, with our dark history, everyone knows that that's not, what happened, and the amount of indigenous people that suffered in slavery. Of course, America was built on the backs of, enslaving and povertizing people and oppressing. So this dystopian kind of trajectory, I don't know how one stops it. Except that, we have to, as citizens, all kind of, gather together as a working class and push back, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm waiting to figure out what that moment is going to be for the American people, but we'll see.
Right. So yeah, like any more comments or questions come in?
Crab said Google it, says unanimous vote on the Kansas City thing. That was by unanimous vote. So
oh my gosh. There's not even an opposition to it.
Yeah. But no, I mean, me and Misty talked about this. Like we went pretty hard. You know, just because we feel like it's more blatant, like, you know, I mean, it's literally criminalizing the homeless. Like, you can't get more blatant than that. Like, you know, and with the amount of,
I mean, they're doing it in New York City. Yeah, they're doing it. And I mean, they're doing sweeps. And then like Rome, remember we had Rome on the show a couple weeks ago. He talked about getting everyone tents for the homeless. And then he gives them all away. And then boom, the police confiscate the very tents that were supposed to at least allow them some shelter. I mean, it's just dark and horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. To me, it's just, there's so much, like, between that and 40 billion to Ukraine, you're not sure which is worse, you know?
Well,
so,
and for those people who may not know what we're talking about, the 40 billion that Ron Paul had temporarily stopped actually sailed through, and the $40 billion will be for weapons in Ukraine. They said some aid, but like, if you recall, there were headline after headline after headline a couple of years ago talking about how corrupt Ukraine is. And then recently, one of the legacy media said, hey, wait a second, do we even know who's getting these weapons and where this money is really going? And no one does. There's no accounting. Ron Paul was doing that law specifically to say, okay, where is this money going? Who's getting it? How is it being used? Some sort of, you know, accounting.
Right.
Which would seem like a natural thing to do. But that's why, you know, a lot of people are talking about it being a money laundering scheme for our elite politicians, or, you know, those top politicians in the Democratic and Republican Party. I think only 12 Republicans voted against the 40 billion.
Right.
And then, you know, Ron Paul was the one who tried to stop it. So, yeah. But like, you know, so we can give $40 billion to line these weapon manufacturers' pockets. And yet we're going to leave almost 700,000 people in America homeless, and then go even a step further and criminalize their status. It's stunning. But yet it's the trajectory we all seem to be on. So, yeah. So ridiculous. Feel free to post a comment or a question.
Will do. I'll keep looking for some. We're still kind of having people trickle in and out. So people should, you know, share it around and get some more people in here and all that fun stuff. But
that is good.
Yeah,
that is good.
But
so what was going on with Misty these days? What's going on with Assange? How's that going?
She's got, I think they're focusing on the, like, what's it called? The recent elections in Australia, where there's some big pushes to get like push back on the guy who recently got elected there, who said he would help Assange, and Misty's trying to apply pressure there. So good for her.
Good for her. And he's an Australian citizen, Julian Assange is. So and I know that the Australian Parliament made a statement that they wanted the charges dropped. Yeah. Now, and for those of you that are listening, Julian Assange is facing 175 years in prison if he's extradited to the United States. Right now, he's in the most dire prison in Great Britain, which is the Belmarsh prison, very famous for being very difficult to be in. And he's not been allowed to, I think, attend his last hearing. Is that right?
I think so.
I remember that. He
wasn't allowed to attend that.
Right.
So yeah, I
he
wish
has
I
two
knew.
children. It's really sad, because now his children only know him. And then, when you look at what he did, what did he do? He was a journalist and a publisher, and he published about the empire's war crimes. And for that, they imprisoned him, took away his freedom, and he's facing now Espionage Act, even though he's not an American citizen, he's Australian, and they're trying to extradite him here. He lost his appeal, and that's what's happening. So we're waiting for a final decision regarding when, and he will be extradited. So, we'll see, but this is going to affect everybody's lives because it will affect journalists all over the world. And that's why, no matter what your politics are, I don't understand why Western journalists don't see that it could be them, right?
Yeah,
but,
very much so.
Yeah,
like
it could be any one of us.
Very it's crazy to think that we're still trying to like warn people, like that's still part of the narrative management, so yeah, it's all crazy to me, in my opinion, like that we're still having to do that. It feels like we've been yelling about this stuff for the last 30 years,
Yeah,
and then some, the same things.
Yeah.
So
and they're just getting, and the people in power right now in some of the Western empires are just getting more and more blatant about their resistance to do anything about the persecution of journalists. Like, for instance, what just happened, Israel just is refusing to investigate the Palestinian journalist. She was actually an American Palestinian journalist who was killed by a sniper bullet, and Shireen, and they're not even going to investigate it. I mean, and it was an assassination. She was shot underneath her protective helmet, even though she was wearing press on her chest. And and then of course at her funeral procession, it was so horrifying. I mean, I don't know about you, Reef, but it literally, like, I cried. Like I was like wrecked after I saw it. And they pulled down her coffin, they pulled off the Palestinian flag. They didn't even and they were attacking the mourners. They wouldn't even let her be mourned with dignity and with space. And it was just, it was the Israeli occupiers, attacked the mourners. It was really disgusting. And now they won't investigate. So,
no. And
the US basically has said nothing. So not much.
It's crazy.
So there you have it. Yeah.
Who
knew that, one of the most dangerous professions in the world would be to be an investigative journalist, but here you go. Times we live in.
Literally that they're having to fear for their lives, So, we're about to come up at the 10:15 mark if you want to back out and wait for Mr. Daniel. So, but plus I can see if I can try to fix these nameplates while we do that. But anyway.
Okay, everyone, we're taking a small break while we wait for Daniel to come join us. So, yeah, hang tight. Hang tight, everybody.
And transition. Mic's off.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Tara Reade came out to say the man they tried to label the Messiah of morality was really just another rapist.
Welcome back to Politics of Survival. And I went out.
Yep.
And what the whole purpose of this show is to build a leadership that is capable in the United States, in North America, of challenging this policy of depopulation, World War III, and hyperinflation, which is what we're up against. This is not some kind of oh, things are just going bad, things are just going to hell in a handbasket. That's not what's going on. There's a group of people who are at the City of London, they're at Wall Street, they're in the leading institutions that have been waging colonial war against humanity for hundreds of years. And we have to stop them from executing this policy, and we have to bring about a new world. Because right now, Russia, China have a partnership. Their partnership is based on a new era for humanity. It's based on an idea that they're not going to go along with the suicide of the Great Reset, of the Green New Deal. They're not going to accept the NATO policy of carving up, destroying, regime change in Russia and China. And they're not accepting deindustrialization in the name of CO2 reduction. And those countries right now are a huge part of the world's physical economy. They're a huge part of the world's population. If you include India, South Africa, and Brazil, which are part of the BRICS, and these nations have refused to go along with the condemning of Russia and the sanctions on Russia. They're forging a new path. So we at the LaRouche organization are trying to advance a plan, a policy orientation that we have developed based on the economics of LaRouche to bring that new era into fruition and to put this old era out of it, get rid of it, finish that off.
Very good. Very good. Well, I'm speaking of which, nuclear war and all of that, Arif has a headline I'd given to him. I wanted you to look at, and then we can discuss. Can you throw that up? Throw up our T's, but then also throw up the Washington Post there. I mean, excuse me, Washington Journal. Okay.
So here's the MSN
so
one.
Basically,
you want the nuclear one, though, right?
There's
Which one?
Yeah. There we go.
This one?
The nuclear one.
Okay.
We'll get to China.
I got you.
Oh my God.
The U.S. should show it could win a nuclear war. Just that headline is all you need to see to know what that article's about. What are your thoughts, Daniel, about that?
So on our show, we actually went through something else that I can share with you that is from the Royal, what is it called exactly? I keep forgetting, but there's basically the oldest think tank group for the British Empire going back to 1831, the defense think tank, right? Defense Forum. They have the same outlook. The idea that they're promoting is that in order to end the war, we actually need to create, and I'm not joking, quote unquote, a Cuban Missile Crisis on steroids.
Whoa.
Right? So the whole thing that you're seeing here, the US should show it can win a nuclear war. It's the same idea. It's an idea that if we could escalate by increasingly threatening Russia, then somehow that's going to lead to a good situation. Somehow that's going to improve things. That's going to make it so that people can take the right decisions, which means, basically they think somehow that they can get Russia, they can get to get rid of Putin. They can somehow, change the government there if they can put enough pressure. They can, destroy the economy and so forth. And it's just lunacy because the sanctions policy, it's destroying the West. It's destroying European economies.
Our economies are tanking. And not only that, but Vladimir Putin's approval rates are in the 80 percentile. Our American president is the lowest, I think, in history at this point, where they're saying it's 39%, but that means it's probably even lower. And when you look at that, and then also from the last two presidents, Vladimir Putin's ratings in America were higher than the last two US presidents. And I think that's so funny. So if anyone ever says to you, oh, it's because it's an authoritative regime and that's why his ratings are so high. Nope. It's because the normal citizen sees through the propaganda, sees the elites, and knows what they're doing. But a lot of us don't feel as empowered anymore because of the class divide, because of the censoring and the banning that's going on in Western media that's so strong that we're only allowed to hear one narrative, and that's through a Western lens. And so Daniel, what are because what I love about talking to you is that you're so, besides giving a lot of historical context, which you do, you're so solution-based. So what is one of the solutions that an average working class citizen can do to push back on this?
Well, I think that, it is the case that we gotta look at, like, how did we get here? What happened to the American population that they accept this kind of thing? And we should make fun of people who are willing to go around and just sort of, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Like, hello, this is like your future, your children, your grandchildren, like, maybe you should think through how the United States has come out of problems in the past. Ever hear of the Great Depression? Ever hear of the conditions that we've been in? Well, I think that, the simple things are straightforward. Like, people should engage with voices like yours, with organizations that are fighting. They should support political campaigns that are moving in that direction. I've been working with Diane Sayre, who's running for U.S. Senate against Chuck Schumer. And I was out campaigning for, actually getting petition signatures for her in front of a grocery store in New York, in White Plains, New York. And we just said, look, we pointed to the grocery store. We said, hello, this is not what they're claiming. This is not some kind of a simple, problem. This is a major catastrophe, strategic level, systemic breakdown of the economy, and the political figures right now are insane and they don't know how to deal with it. So we need leadership, and that's why I'm working with this woman, Diane Sayre. So the fundamental thing I guess I'd say is it comes down to leadership and the concept of leadership, and Americans have got to stop presuming that someone else is going to lead the way. They have to learn on their own. They have to discover on their own how to address these problems.
Well, and I think that it requires critical thinking. Like, people need to take back their narrative, their own narratives, and it's our collective narratives, but their own narratives. And one of the things that I love about you and Caleb Maupin, whom I met you through Caleb, right? The Center of Political Innovation. Talk a little bit about that work and like how you and Caleb met, but also, the evolution of what you're doing now. Can you kind of take us through that?
Yeah, sure. Well, Caleb and I have been friends for about 10 years, although the first time that we met, we were screaming at each other because,
Okay.
because
I haven't heard the story.
Oh, no, yeah, it's true. We met at Occupy Wall Street. And,
Oh, that's right. Okay.
yeah, and I'm with Lyndon LaRouche's political movement, and people on the left had told Caleb that LaRouche is a fascist, anti-Semite cult leader, which of course is exactly the kind of thing that Caleb is getting called now.
Oh no.
And I mean, he gets called a fascist like 10 times a day. So,
I know. It's ridiculous.
So he started screaming at me, and I started yelling at him, and we were yelling at each other, and then and that was how we first met. But somehow, not that long after, we started to talk more, and we collaborated. And today I think he's doing something extremely important, because we're trying to actually, build a leadership in the United States, especially among younger people, that is capable of responding to the positive proposals of Russia and China. What qualifies Caleb is that he is actually committed to the idea that the US could join the Belt and Road Initiative, could cooperate with China to industrialize the world. And that's something that I've been fighting for 10 years. And well, since 2013, when the Belt and Road Initiative was announced. But that's kind of where we're at right now, that there are proposals coming. Look at December. I know you know the story very well. What happened? That Putin proposed, the Russian government proposed 2 peace treaties, one to the United States, one to NATO, and said, look, we could solve this if you are willing to acknowledge the indivisible security needs of the Russian Federation. And if you are, we can fix things, right? We want to have peace. We want to have collaboration.
Yeah, because the collaboration leads to innovation. It leads to economic well-being for everyone, not just one nation. But I think there's this hell-bent thing with the West of being this unipolar dominating force, economically particularly. And then that kills innovation. Because if people are just in survival, more warmongering, and it kind of kills the innovation, and it kills cooperation. But you're right. And one thing I want the audience to think about is, because what's getting lost in all this narrative with Ukraine and this proxy war that the US and NATO is fighting against Russia, using Ukraine as cannon fodder, what's getting lost is that Vladimir Putin for years tried very reasonably to simply just ask NATO quit expanding and make Ukraine neutral. These are not outrageous demands. I don't know. I don't understand. It's definitely, when you do a cost benefit analysis of the lives that are being lost, of the damage that's being done all over the globe, of bringing us closer to the brink of nuclear war. I mean, why is there no discussion of peace and only war? That's the question.
My view has been that the cause of that, because I agree with you, it's completely maddening, it's terrifying, it's bizarre. You look at all of the missed opportunities, all of the olive branches that were put out. Remember, of course, there was a major shift after Russia voted in favor of the United Nations measure against Libya. And then they saw what the US actually meant, which was that they were going to destroy Libya. And Russia said, we're not going to fall for this crap anymore. You people are lunatics. But, I think that so much of this failure to think this way has to do with neoliberalism as an economic outlook. Because the way you're saying, this sort of this intended domination of the world economically, of course, all that really means is domination through controlling international finance, the cartels. And it's not the US government trying to control them. It's the fact that those cartels, those banking cartels, control the governments and have,
economic forum, the World Economic Forum, making decisions for everyday average working people. And
absolutely,
it's a handful of very, very wealthy people with very wealthy interests. And they're not interested in the well-being of the planet. They're interested in their own lining of pockets. And that's the problem. So Daniel, how do you account for greed? The economic theory of it'll all work out in the marketplace. Yeah, but it doesn't work with greed, right? That's where it gets lost. That's where the formula fails. So how do you address it?
Well,
I know that's an existential question, but
no, the invisible hand of Adam Smith
Right.
is picking your pocket, right?
Yep.
There is the invisible hand is BS. It was always designed to be a justification for oligarchs to steal oligarchy, to destroy nations, and to loot and to rape and to kill. That's what they do. That's what an oligarchy does. It says, the whole purpose of our existence is power. Our power gives us the right to do whatever we want, and we're good because we're powerful. And the opposing intention is the intention of a republic that says that the purpose of government, the purpose of human existence, is the common welfare, and that we fight for the benefit of all. The latter outlook is truthful. The former outlook is simply false. The nature of the universe is that human beings can make discoveries of universal principle that allow us to make breakthroughs in science and technology that allow us to lift up everyone, and that the real future is in the common aims of mankind, which is really driven home right now because the UN Secretary General is now warning that we have 1.7 billion people who are going hungry or could even starve to death due to this economic crisis that we're presently in. So, that either we get together and we rescue humanity, or you're looking at starvation on a level that has never been imagined before.
It's stunning, really. Reef, could you bring up the 2 articles about China? Speaking of China, I wanted to show you, here's a couple of headlines. Today, as you may, and I'm sure you know this, Biden supposedly made a snafu, but I'm starting to wonder if that wasn't like a shot over the bow, right? Verbally. But he basically, here, go ahead and bring up that headline, Reef. So I can, there we go. He basically was saying that the US would engage militarily with China over Taiwan. Meanwhile, Taiwan, 88% of Taiwan is happy with the way things are. And so they don't want what the US is trying to, further. So anyway, what were your thoughts when you saw these stories kind of, pepper the news today of basically, they called it a snafu and the White House was supposedly backpedaling, but I wonder, I don't know.
No, I think that you're right. I mean, the pattern is simply that the US is saying, you cannot trust us. You can't trust us at all. You don't even imagine that you can trust us because you can't trust us. And that is causing an enormous crisis, because how can China's government deal with the US government right now? There's where do you stand? Where's the, how do you actually get some kind of collaboration when you have this constant policy?
The United States is saying there's going to be military action over Taiwan, and then the White House administration is saying, well, no, he didn't really mean that, and back up. That's a very confusing, but yet threatening, right? Hostile stance. And he is the president of the United States. So I don't know. I think that actually the administration, particularly there's Jake Sullivan, who has been very much matches that rhetoric of what Biden accidentally said today. So he just accidentally reveal the US intelligence position, right? Or did he do that on purpose to send China that message? And I guess I kind of wonder, but I don't know.
I mean, ultimately, the message has already been made clear that there is a intention to do to Taiwan was been done to Ukraine.
Right.
Right. And what's that policy? That's to fight to the last Ukrainian, fight to the last Taiwanese. I mean, there's a lunatic idea that the kind of brinksmanship that was used to communicate to Russia, yes, you are facing an existential threat. They're going to keep doing that in Taiwan. There's a Rand Corporation study or proposal that made this very clear, where they're like buzzing on the side, or they're sending all of these provocative military exercises right on the edge. That's what they did to Russia. And so, no nation can deal with that kind of action and just say, oh, these are just exercises. It's like people saying they're defensive weapons.
Right.
I mean, yeah. And so therefore they're going to respond.
It's like calling it lethal aid, how we change the words. Or we call our oligarchs, American oligarchs are called entrepreneurs, right? Like our language is just so skewed to the empire, right? Hey, Reef, do you have any comments or questions that are coming in for Daniel or for me regarding this?
I will go back up a little bit. So yeah. So where was that? Do you think we can coup Russia? Is one of the questions. I don't know if that's possible myself personally, but I don't know about you two.
I don't. Why would we want to? He's saying LOL. That's Crab. Hi, Crab. He's making a joke. I mean, like, remember, and it's reminiscent of Elon Musk's little tweet where he said when we went in for Bolivia because of all the, mineral rights and things that we wanted there. And remember Elon's famous tweet that said, "We'll coup whoever we want." Mm-hmm. He said it was a joke later. I don't know, but I think this regime change thing, this focus, I don't know what you think, Daniel, but personally, I don't care who would be president of Russia. We would be doing the same type of rhetoric and villainization of that person and trying to get regime change, no matter who it was, if they're a strong leader, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole point is that there's a policy called geopolitics, where the idea is we need to fight over the heartland. We need to fight over Eurasia, and that we can't possibly allow the oligarchs, the financial cartels, the way that these people think the continuation of the British Empire today, the Anglo-American Empire, whatever you want to call it, but the British monarchy has a major role in it. And their outlook is that you can't allow Russia to work together with Germany. That would be disastrous. And you certainly can't allow Russia to work together with the United States. Or, last time that happened, World War II, the British nearly lost their colonies, by the way. And then if you go to prior to that, the Civil War, Lincoln was supported by the Russians. And that was not the way that this faction wanted it to go. They wanted to break up the United States. They wanted to get rid of the Union. So you have a long-term policy of trying to prevent collaboration between the major powers of the world. And that's why what we're doing at the Schiller Institute and the LaRouche movement is that we're calling for a new international conference to be convoked to actually address the need for a new international and security architecture. Because the whole point is that Russia is saying we need a new architecture. China is saying, Xi Jinping announced 2 major initiatives in the past 6 months, one of them just about 3-4 weeks ago, which is a global security initiative. In other words, a new global security architecture, new agreements about how this is going to work, as opposed to NATO versus, right? And then also a global development initiative, which is the idea that you'd have to have nations expressly working together for the physical economic development of their nations and not this free trade, monetarism crap. And that's what we're demanding right now. And we're seeing some very positive responses. The present Russian ambassador to the United States is Anatoly Antonov. And he spoke at our conference April 9th. And he spoke right after Helga LaRouche, and he said he would work with us on any future events, and that he thinks that without the Schiller Institute, it'll be very difficult to find a necessary compromise among all the parties involved.
Wow.
Because we're getting across the idea that compromise is in cooperation in physical economics, in science, in infrastructure and technology. That's where all nations benefit.
In the arts, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it hasn't been stunning. What's really been amazing to me, and it's the first time I've seen this in at least my lifetime, where you have Russian ballet dancers, composers, people, sports athletes that are competing in, world competitions or whatever. They're being asked to basically speak against their own country and against their own president if they want to continue participating. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's like cancel culture on steroids, but really, really xenophobic, very bigoted. I mean, what are some thoughts on that? Like, what are you hearing about, from, I mean, it must be just so frustrating for people. I know many artists that are Russian, right? Like some friends of mine, they have nothing to do with politics. How mind-boggling and frustrating it must be for them.
I mean, it's no longer simply an attack on Russia, right? As a state, it's an attack on the Russian civilization.
Yeah.
You're talking about a 1,000-year civilization, right? And they're saying Pushkin out, Tchaikovsky out. And I mean, this is brutal. This is absolutely barbaric.
27 million, at least, Soviets lost their lives fighting against Nazis. And here we are. And what's really, it's like sickening to me every day as an American to think that here we were, supposedly we were going to fight Nazis. We're actually funding neo-Nazis.
Absolutely.
And the money that we pay in taxes is going towards killing Russia. No, I don't like it. I don't want it. And many US citizens that don't have a voice feel the same way. They don't want this. And it's like, the consent's been manufactured, and it's been, that 40 billion that just passed, and to Ron Paul's credit, he tried to stop it only for the accounting piece. He delayed it, but you only had 12 Republicans vote against it. All of the Democrats voted for it. Even the progressives, supposedly the progressives, if you want to call them that. I mean, $40 billion. Imagine what that could have done, Daniel, for America, or for Europe, or for like any other program. It's just, yeah.
No, I agree with you. And I mean, right now, it's unavoidable that we're going through an absolutely disastrous economic breakdown. Like, who is going to turn around and say, oh, no, it's not a big deal that food has increased by 600% in certain poor areas of the world? Oh, that's just a boom and bust cycle. No, you idiot. We're in a crisis that needs to be addressed with a level of dignity and a level of compassion and love for humanity, because otherwise the poor countries are just going to be wiped out. And I mean, imagine that you wake up one day, and this is happening in the United States now, and basically your life savings is trickling away from you or is completely taken from you because of the price of food and housing and so forth. But I mean, especially food right now. Look at Sri Lanka, it's in complete shambles. It's a disastrous situation, and they can't get what they need. They can't get what they need. And, I mean, this is what we're really dealing with. We're not dealing with some kind of, American political moment. That's not what it is. It's nothing to do with that. Yeah. It's a matter of whether we can resist this policy and turn it around.
Absolutely right. So Reef, could you throw up any more questions for Daniel or comments?
I got one on Rockfin from Uphold Reality. Can you ask Daniel about the history of government repression against the LaRouche movement? Is what was asked.
Great question. I'm going to lean back and listen to this.
Hi, Uphold Reality. So we know each other a little bit on Twitter. Anyway, I basically the important thing to understand is that 1975, LaRouche proposed what's called the International Development Bank. And he and his group of his youth movement, he was in his 40s when he was going into the SDS in the late 1960s and recruiting people out of the anti-Vietnam movement and recruiting them to the development of the third world. That was always his policy. In 1975, he puts together a pamphlet that's called How the International Development Bank Will Work. And it's a proposal for a new international bank to provide credit for the economic development, the real physical economic development of the third world, to actually get them what they need to be able to have train systems, power systems, energy systems, that, whatever, medical systems, infrastructure. Yeah, an economy, a modern economy, and that every nation should have access to the most advanced technologies, including, he said, we have to make the development of thermonuclear fusion, controlled thermonuclear fusion, a centerpiece of our future development of the world economy. And within a year, the non-aligned movement, the non-aligned nations had met in Colombo, Sri Lanka, actually, coincidentally, and they adopted a proposal that was congruent with LaRouche's outline. And so the poor nations of the world, the nations that were caught between the USSR and the USA and said, I don't want to be on either side. We're just trying to develop for our population. We're not part of your Cold War. Those nations said, we need LaRouche's policies. And at that point, Henry Kissinger came down like a ton of bricks on the LaRouche movement. And why? Because Henry Kissinger is arch Malthusian. And he was responsible, I forget exactly the year, but I think it's 1976, it may have been earlier, it must have been 75 or earlier actually, that Kissinger was responsible for a memo, the National Security Study Memo 200, which came out of the State Department with his signature and claimed that the US should make sure to prevent food self-sufficiency in developing nations, that we should keep them down because the population growth in developing nations would make them harder to control by the United States, of course, by the US as an imperial power. So that begins the long saga of the political targeting of LaRouche, which then led eventually, and slander and so forth, campaign against LaRouche, which led eventually to his jailing in 1989 for 5 years. And that's what I'll say there. He was a political prisoner in the US because of the fact that he was fighting for the economic development of all nations.
And then how did he, because I don't know this story, how did he get out of the, underneath the thumb of the prison system and the American justice system, if you will?
Well, he could have served many more years, but Clinton came in, and actually Clinton was within months of Clinton coming in, LaRouche was on parole and was released from prison. So I don't know the whole story there. I don't know exactly what happened, but there was certainly a potential in the Clinton presidency. A lot of my friends and so forth, they just think that everything Clinton did was terrible, and he did a lot of terrible things, but there was a potential there. He could have done certain things that would have changed the future. And anyway, so LaRouche got out of prison, and within a short amount of time, within a few months, he was able to go to Russia. LaRouche visited Russia, I think 3 or 4 times, maybe more, and he spoke in front of the Duma. And for example, he was a guest of Sergei Glaziev, who is a leading thinker in Russia, economist who is in charge of the Eurasian Economic Union project that is happening right now in Russia, in throughout Eurasia. And Glaziev is one of the people today who is trying to orchestrate a new financial economic system. They're responding to the kind of things that LaRouche said was going to happen, where today you cannot keep any reserves in dollars or in euros because the US and Europe are just going to steal it, right? You can't do any of this. So you have to create a new parallel financial system, a new economic system. And Sergei Glaziev is now one of the people trying to do that.
That's amazing. And thank you for that, to give some historical context for, people that are tuning in that may not know. And so Reef, you had another couple comments or questions for Daniel, if you could put them up. And by the way, those of you that are watching and listening, like and subscribe, to this, and also go to, Daniel Burke's Twitter and follow all his links. His links are in his bio.
I should probably read that on air, wouldn't I? That would be nice, wouldn't I? If I could just press the on air button.
Oh, yeah.
What is the end game? Okay. What is the end game in destabilizing the world when we actually have fewer and smaller allies? From Jara Brown.
I'll let you take that, Daniel.
Well, okay, so it has to do with what I said about Kissinger. The policy that we're looking at is depopulation. That's what they're trying to do. There are people who literally believe that the human species is a cancer on the planet and urgently needs to be reduced to levels below 1 billion. And I mean, these are people like the former head of the Bank of England, Mark Carney. Or look at Sir Michael Bloomberg. He is one of the people who believes that we have too many people on the planet. And other, people like David Attenborough or the late Prince Philip. Prince Philip famously said, he did say this, you can look it up. He wrote it in a book, actually, that if he could be reincarnated, he'd like to come back as a deadly virus to help solve the problem of overpopulation.
Wow.
So why do they think this?
All right. So they're not even hiding it. They're not even hiding the end game, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about, you mentioned before the new podcast that you have. Tell us when people can find you, where they can find you, and future things that you're doing right now, if you could.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to your listeners. And I mean, what we're doing, the World Land Bridge Show, it's named after the policy that LaRouche authored along with his wife Helga, the World Land Bridge, which is the economic development of the entire world. And so it's ambitious. We're trying to launch a renaissance. We're trying to fight for equality of leadership in the United States, in North America, all over the world. Please join us. It's Mondays at 8 p.m. It's at, if you go to YouTube and you look up the LaRouche Organization, LaRouche, or if you go to any of those things, then you can easily subscribe and get a notification for next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And listen in there. In addition, if you go to our website, we have a daily update that comes from my friend Harley Schlanger. Actually, you have some good things up in the tab. Go to this next one, the Leonora. This is our quarterly magazine. Thank you very much. Quarterly magazine for the Schiller Institute, and you can read. We're publishing a lot. We have a magazine that comes out weekly. This is a magazine that focuses more on culture and science that comes out quarterly, and people can contribute and get this in their email inbox and stuff like that. But coming up, I am organizing very hard, and I'd really like to invite you, Tara, to join an important conference happening in mid-June, which is going to be hosted by the Schiller Institute. We'll have an invitation very soon, and we need your voice there and your participation. And we'll have high-ranking people, just as we did with Anatoly Antonov last time, and people from all over the world.
Where is that going to take place?
We will do it online. It's going to be
fabulous.
So it's easy to travel.
No passport required.
You can even wear sweatpants. Okay, I usually do.
There you have it. But I'll wear a nice shirt. You never know, right?
Exactly.
That's amazing. So again, that's mid-June, and invitation so people can follow you and they can find out more about it, because that's going to be a fascinating conference. And like I said, whenever I talk with you, I always feel like I learned something. So thank you for being so generous with your time and your knowledge. And and I guess one parting thought. I think the last few days, I've noticed an uptick in the rhetoric in the, legacy media. The stenographers are writing a lot about nuclear war. They're really trying to normalize this. And this is a question that I have. And in fact, it's a very serious question, because I had been under the impression that there is a discussion going on in the Biden administration, that there are some people that actually believe this. And I want to know if it's true, that they think that a limited nuclear war is possible. Have you been hearing that same thing, and have you been seeing that, and what are your thoughts on that? Because we all know limited nuclear war is not possible, but the lunatics that are talking about this in the Biden administration are trying to pepper, with opinion pieces and normalize it to the population. So could you talk a little bit about that before we?
I think you're so on point, and I really appreciate everything that you've done with your voice, including, what I heard from you at the CPI conference when you spoke about the incredible censorship and the fight that we have to have, especially for Russian Americans. At the time, you stressed in your comments. Today, I think you're 1,000% on point. The issue is nuclear war, and the fact is that we have people in the U.S. government, in the U.S. military, who are overtly talking about it. If you go back to Admiral Richards, I think it was early 2021. I think it may have been February of 2021. Admiral Richards, who I think is Pacific Command, I could be wrong, but high-ranking U.S. official said that we have to consider that nuclear war is no longer is no longer improbable, no longer unlikely. So it's likely, he says, that we will have nuclear war. Now,
that's
right. Anyone who says that is saying exactly what you're saying. They're saying that we're planning. Yeah, we're planning for nuclear war. We got a few ideas about how we can win it. And there's a guy named Ted Postol, who's a professor at MIT, who has really rigorously attempted to demonstrate that the whole logic of nuclear war is that any tactical nuke, insane idea, any nuke that you launch of any size is very much nearly guaranteed to lead to the launching of all nuclear weapons. And and that's the destruction of humanity. So we should be fighting it from that standpoint.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think what I've been seeing is like whispers and comments. And I wanted to bring your attention, and you may not have seen this, so I don't want to spring this on you. So I'll put it in context. But Lex Friedman just did a podcast with Oliver Stone, and it was a really fascinating conversation. And Oliver Stone brought up something that I've heard, and then of course Western media said this was a Twitter conspiracy, and it wasn't. Oliver Stone's a very thoughtful person who knows about war, who studied Ukraine for many years and did Ukraine on Fire, Ukraine, Rising. And of course that was banned on YouTube, but now you can see it on Rumble and Rockfin. He talked about a false flag. Now, for those in the audience who may not know what I mean by that, false flag means you create an event and blame it on someone else. And so it's considered a false flag. So in this case, he was saying that the false flag could be a nuclear explosion of some kind in Donbass region specifically, he even mentioned, and that they would be blamed on Russia and perhaps lead us to global conflict. And that's a very real, tangible fear. Now, Oliver Stone is a very thoughtful person, and he is not one to fearmonger. He is one that I would trust. If he brings something up, there's something behind that to look at and to examine and to discuss. Because if we kind of put it out there, okay, American intelligence, we see you, you're not going to get away with that. Maybe that can help stop it and prevent it. So your thoughts on that, and have you heard it, that theory, and what your thoughts are?
I had heard that before. I did not know it came. I didn't know that the two of them discussed that. I look forward to learning more about it. And I have to polish up before I can say and do some investigation because there have been some articles that passed by me. I know that discuss this with some detail, but I would say that I have watched a video of someone at the Hoover Institute at Stanford basically proposing that there should be a false flag chemical weapons attack on Kiev that then would be blamed on Russia and could be the pretext for what? I don't know for what. I mean, all of this stuff is so outrageous.
Well, and this goes back to the biolabs. When we saw the whole dance about the biolabs, when they said the biolabs were Russian disinformation, then they backed down, and Victoria Nuland got caught on camera in the Senate hearing saying, well, okay, yes, those are American funded because the Russian military had the information, they had the receipts, right? And they showed the receipts, like they followed the money, and we had several biolabs. Why do we have them in Ukraine? Why were they being funded? And that is the question. You don't have that kind of chemical weapon biolabs. And some of these bioweapons are things that are banned, right? They're not supposed to be there, and the US got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, and still tried to spin it as Russian disinformation. Anyway, so I think that stems from that. Yeah.
No, I think you're onto it. Absolutely. I mean, there's just been these disgusting policies of deception, and I mean, the financing of neo-Nazis is beyond belief, but it's there. It's not beyond belief because it's been going on since Stepan Bandera.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that we've come to the point in human history where you can no longer fight a war like this. There cannot be a war between the US and Russia. There cannot be a war between NATO and Russia. It cannot happen. But we're already having one. We're having the proxy war, right? We're having the economic war. And so we're already at the brink of extinction. And Helga LaRouche's view is that this is the most dangerous period in the entire history of the human species. So therefore, if people can face that fact and not shrink from it and, you know, watch, I don't know, like watch brainless television to try to distract yourself from it, right? Right. I mean, like, I sympathize with people who are trying to distract themselves, but you can't do that right now. It's out of it. You gotta open up your heart, your mind, and consider what's happening. And then, as you're stressing in our discussion, you have to start advocating the solutions. You have to get out of the fandom. People have been trained to treat everything as fandom, like, oh, well, I like these guys, I like those guys. Even some people who Americans who are, you know, against NATO, and they just sort of, they're like Putin fanboys. Like, I love Putin, but you're not. I do. I'm not afraid to say that, but I'm not.
Well,
That's not.
I support Vladimir Putin. Again, a lot of criticism, as you know, for that. So yeah.
But like, being a cheerleader is the last thing that any of these people need. You need to be a leader.
Yeah.
So.
And that's true. And say that to every audience member. You need to be a leader and critical thinker. Like, and you don't have to agree with every single thing that your politician that you've, you know, your elected politician or whatever does. And a lot of people too have gotten kind of disgusted with electoral politics, and that's a whole other discussion. We won't go there right now. But what I did want to say is thank you so much for your time and your generosity with bringing all this information and all these resources, because it's one thing to talk about it and to say sort of these existential threats exist and then not know. But like, what I love about my conversations with you is there are solutions, there are directions we can go to try to, you know, preserve our lives and preserve the lives for our grandchildren that are coming, right? And create a better world. Yeah. So.
Well, before we conclude, I just want to make sure I know, you know, that I'm going to make sure you get all of our publications for free, and then you have a nice way to stay in touch and hear what we're writing in between our conversations.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you so much. And, you know, being a writer, I'd love to even submit something sometime if you're interested. So thank you for coming on, and come on again, please, because we want to have you back. And to everyone who's listening, I really appreciate your support. Please support Independent News Network and content creators. We need other voices other than just the mainstream Western lens. We need voices like Daniel Burke's. We need, we need offerings of different viewpoints rather than just this one narrative that we're kind of being shoved down our throats. So there you have it. Keep fighting the fight, and we'll see you next time. Good night, everyone.
Well, thank you.
We're out. Cool.